Hello, my most amazing artists. Today you're going to be doing something called glazing your cupcakes. Glaze is like a paint, but it's special and very expensive. It's going to make your clay cupcake bowl food safe, as well as shiny and have a nice coat on it that looks really, really awesome to make it ceramic, just like real ceramic artists do, just like the bowls you might eat out of at home or coffee mugs you might drink chocolate or coffee out of. So today we're going to be using glaze to glaze our cupcakes. You might realize that your cupcake has gone through a physical and chemical change. It is no longer clay, it's now ceramic. It's also changed in color. Now it's white instead of gray because it's dry. It's going to be as hard as a rock now. Now we can't paint the bottom because the glaze has to go back in the kiln, and it's going to sit like this, just like it did when it baked in the kiln the first time when it dried. So you need to make sure that you only paint around the edges and inside the bowl, not on the bottoms where it's going to sit. So anywhere that it's going to touch the bottom of the clay oven, separate like that, you cannot paint. So you can paint everything except for that. This is what the glazes look like. Now the glazes look different when they're in liquid form than they do when they come out of the clay oven. Just like how your clay went in the oven gray and came out white, it's going through a chemical change. All the things that make up this pigment and the glaze is going to get fired in the kiln and start to change color. So you'll see in the pictures here, I have what color they are. So you might see that the grape or the purple is actually a really dark purple instead of this light pinky color that it looks like now when it's in liquid form. So just make sure that even when you look at the paint now or the glaze, it might change its color. So make sure you pay attention to that picture, or I'll have a chart up on the screen too so that you can see it, and make sure you're using the right color for what you want for your cupcake. So there's two different sets of colors. Each table will have those two different sets of colors, and each person at the table will be able to use the one. Now, if you would like to switch with the other artist, you will be able to switch so that you get to use all of the colors. You might have a different brown that you want to use instead of dark brown. The other tray might have light brown. I just don't have enough glaze trays for everybody to have both of their own. So we will have to do a swap if you need to share. So I'm going to keep all of that in the middle, as well as different size brushes so that you can use for your glaze. You also will notice you don't have a water cup, but you do have a sponge. We're going to use the sponge to clean off our brushes between colors of glaze, because the glaze you don't want to get wet. It has to stay really thick and dry fast. So I'm starting out with my limes, surprisingly with yellow. You want to use the lightest color first. The lightest colors go first, and then you build on the darkest colors after you're done with the lightest ones. Start out with the lightest ones, and then you can build the darkest colors after. So if I'm starting out with my lime, but I had a little bit of yellow in the oil pastel plan, I'm going to paint that on first, and then I'll add some green in there to mix in. But I can only mix on my clay or my ceramic. I can't mix in the paint tray. So anytime that I'm using a color, I have to make sure that I only mix it on my clay, meaning that I sponge off my brush in between colors. I'm not mixing up those glazes because they are very expensive. So if I want to change my color, now I'm going to brush those bristles off and make sure I squeeze that sponge kind of to wrap it around to really get that brush clean. So now I'm ready to go to my lime color. So now I can mix in the colors, as long as you're doing it on your clay. Now you also want to make sure you do 3 coats of glaze. So you want to have 3 coats of glaze on everything. You'll notice once you paint one layer, it dries super, super fast. The clay sucks all the glaze up and it dries really fast. So make sure that you do 3 coats. You'll notice that the first one dries fast, do another one, it dries even faster, and then your last one on top. Always make sure you're doing at least 3 coats of glaze on any area. So after I'm done with my limes, I'm going to paint my entire cupcake. I'm going to choose to paint it white. It's up to you what color you paint yours. Just make sure that you're only painting around the outsides and not the insides. And 3 coats, because you can see here, 1, 2, 3, what it looks like when you have those different amount of coats on there. So you want to make sure you have 3 and that you get your brush into all of the cracks and crevices there. Brush off my brush on the sponge, and then I'm ready to go to my next color of glaze. I'm going to do white. You want to do the lightest colors first and paint your details last. So for example, I don't have to paint around my sprinkles. I can go right over top of them, and then I can use a tiny brush to paint my sprinkles after. So I'm going to do 3 coats of white glaze to make my white cupcake, And then if you remember from my oil pastel drawing, I also had a little bit of key lime like flavoring in my frosting. So then I add some yellow and a little bit of brush of green too. So I'm using a bunch of colors and I can sponge it off if I make a mistake. If there's a color that you accidentally get on there, it's not permanent. You can use the sponge to get it off, but you don't want to get your cupcake totally wet, and you also don't want to waste the glaze and just wash it off and start again because it is expensive. So you can use that sponge if you make a little mistake to sponge it off and then paint over it. So now I'm going to go ahead and do my sprinkles with a tiny brush. I think I'll do orange sprinkles. And I'm not painting the inside, don't forget that, only the outside. So after I get my sprinkles painted, then I'll paint the bottom. I think I'll use like a brownish color to do that cupcake, kind of the cake texture. I could have mixed more colors in if I had more time, but I wanted to make sure that you get enough time to paint your cupcakes today. So just don't forget, you can't paint the bottoms anywhere it's going to sit on the kiln because it does have to go back in the kiln one more time. You can paint everything, just make sure you do the lightest colors first and then your details last. And don't paint the bottoms and use 3 layers of paint on anything. Make sure you always use 3 layers and switch your brush and use your sponge to wipe it off in between. All right, awesome artists, I cannot wait to see your yummy painted cupcakes and when they come out of the kiln again. Have fun.